In this selection of stories, you'll learn all about the core learning enhancements that have been put into the system within Update 44. So the first story is dealing with a responsive content player. Now this is actually a support that's been added to the next generation player template that you may already be familiar with, as this was released just a couple releases ago. What you can now do with that, though, is you can now have responsive content that you've developed or that you've purchased from a third-party vendor, and you can take advantage of that responsiveness using the content player. So it'll automatically resize the content based on the device the user has or the size of the browser that they're in, and it'll adjust that size based on those variables. So as you can see, this is something that is really going to be a necessity probably in the near future, because responsive design is something that you're seeing more and more of, and it's probably going to be inevitable that you'll want to start at least exploring the options to have responsive content. So there is now a player template that you can definitely take advantage of to have that. And as you can see, this player template also really has other benefits as well. It's reduced a lot of the redundancies that you had from other player templates. It's saving a lot of the real estate just for the content itself. You can see in the left navigation that there are all of the learning activities that are available for that particular class. So that's another benefit of this. If you have, let's say, 5 learning activities for a class, if you click launch for the first activity, in the previous player template, that would only allow you to launch that one content. Then you'd have to close it and repeat that process for all the remaining ones. In the next generation player template, in this current form, you can launch it just once and it'll show all 5 of those learning activities within the table of content. So you can collapse it or expand it depending on if you want to navigate to the next one. And so it's really just one click of launch that can take you there. So a very nice, smooth process. And what I want to do is show you where you can go to add this feature in your system. So I'm going to jump over to the admin area. Previously, this was only available if you created a course using the simplified method, but now you can actually take advantage of this for any content that you have for any course type. If you created it as a quick course, advanced course, it doesn't matter, because it's really at the content level that you're going to choose that option. So if I go over to Manage Content, under Content Player, you can search for a content player that already exists, or you can create a new one. It doesn't matter. You can see that there is a modern content player template that I have in this system. You can do this for any player template though. There is going to be a player view option that has been added. So if you click classic, it's the classic view, the view that you're currently familiar with, where you have to enter in the height, the width, you want to determine if there's a table of contents, how big is it. So all of that is going to be eliminated in the modern design because it's irrelevant. Whatever the height or width might be, those are going to be determined by the content. So it's automatically going to adjust the size based on those factors. And then the table of contents is also going to be determined by your need for it. If you have multiple learning activities, then you may indeed want to expand it, but it's going to be built in, so you can expand it or collapse it as needed. So that is how you can enable that, and then you'll just want to go to your content within the production repository, and at the content level you'll decide that you want to maybe use this template. So the recommendation is probably to create a new template and just make sure you qualify it as the modern template, and then make sure that you have modern selected for it. Of course, you can always just go to an existing one or several of them and choose that option as well. The next feature deals with the refreshed course details page and workflow. And this has actually been extended to several additional screens. So previously, you only could really benefit from this new details page if you were looking for web-based classes that you have not yet registered for. So going forward, you'll be able to view that same screen regardless of the status for your web-based classes that you are examining. You'll also see this screen essentially there for checklists as well. So it's a very similar kind of next generation screen that you'll see for the checklists and for tasks. What I want to do is just share my screen once again so that you can see what that looks like. And actually what I'll do is I'll search for a course that I haven't registered for, and I'll show you one that I'm already in progress with. So here's safety compliance training. So you can see that it has a class available. I haven't registered for it, otherwise it would actually tell me within my status, like right here. So if I click on it, this is going to show me the next generation screen. And this is actually something that you'll want to enable within services, and it's under the learning beta page. So here you can see that it's a very modern looking page. You can have the image here, or even you can have up to a 30-second video preview as well. It'll have any activities that are at the course level or at the class level, and you can also see any classes themselves. If there are any class level attachments, you'll actually only see those once you have registered for the class. But if they are at the course level, you'll actually see them even before you've registered for it. Let me go back for a second so I can access a course that I've already enrolled in, like Acme Safety Training. So here you can see that it's the same page, and this is really the enhancement for U44, the same page regardless of the status. And this one does have attachments that you can see right here under the attachments section. And if there are any classes, I'd be able to search for them. I can register for them. So a very nice process. And then the checklist enhancement is essentially the same sort of experience, the same sort of modern looking page that will be available. Next, you can see that there's going to be a bit of a logic change for your transcript that deals with completion dates. There has been a long-standing sort of confusion with completion dates because there are really two different completion dates in Saba. You have one for the completed on date and one for the date marked complete. And these are two completely different dates. So just to give you a really simple example, let's say there is an ILT class that you attended on Monday. It was just a one-day, one-session class, and the instructor did not mark it complete until Wednesday. So those are two different dates. The completed on date was Monday, the date that you attended that class, and the date that it was actually marked complete would have been Wednesday. So which date would you want to have on your transcript? Obviously, you would want to have the completed on date. You want to know the date you completed it, not when the admin or the instructor got around to marking it complete. And so going forward, you'll actually see that that is the case. You'll see that for courses, you'll see it for certifications, for curricula, and so a lot of these can really make the difference between being in compliance and not being in compliance, really based on an administrative date. Now for ad hoc transcripts, the system will simply use the date that you provide in there. So there's actually an end date that is one of the optional fields. If you put in a date there, that will be the date that it uses. That is going to be the completed on date. If you leave that field blank, then it's going to be forced to use the date marked complete, the date you're actually in the system, giving users credit for an ad hoc transcript. So that is how this system will now use the logic for completion dates. Another enhancement deals with the simplified course workflow. So a couple releases ago, this was added to the system, and it's really been evolving ever since and becoming more and more adopted by users. What this allows you to do, it allows you to create courses and web-based classes all on one screen, and you can add content to them. You can have achievements added, and it's similar in concept to the quick course, but it does have some additional benefits to it. One of the big differences is the fact that it uses something called a course template, so that you can pre-populate and predetermine different field values and if they appear on the screen or not for the admins who are creating the courses. So it can really speed up that creation process significantly if you start to take advantage of this by creating those course templates and having them associated to the different simplified courses that you create. So this was previously available for users that had the associated security role, and they could create these courses from their homepage, and they could manage them from the Me area under the Courses I Manage menu. That menu option is now available on the homepage via Portlet, and you can also access it from the admin pages. So where you go to manage courses such as advanced courses and quick courses, you can also now manage simplified courses. Let me share my screen so you can see that. So I'm going to jump over to admin once again, Go to Learning. And if I go to Manage Learning Catalog, I'm going to filter on just courses, and you can see there's an option, Is Simplified. So is it a course that was created using the simplified workflow? If it is, then show all of those courses. And as you can see, if I go into one of these and click Edit, then it uses the simplified edit screen. So this is quite different from the quick course menu or from the advanced course menu. So it's all on one page, and you have all the different options, achievements, notifications, and potentially custom fields that you can go through and modify as needed. So very simple but effective for that new feature to access it as a learning admin. The next story deals with the ability to associate skills to certifications and curricula. So previously you could only associate skills to courses. So if you wanted to be able to have a skill associated to somebody after they completed a curriculum, you'd basically have to change the way that your curriculum is made up in order to accomplish that. You'd have to have the skill associated to the course and then make sure that that course is the last thing the person completes within that curriculum, which is available. You can do that, but it's really a workaround as opposed to a solution. So now you have a real solution, which is simply to add the skill directly to the curriculum or the certification, and once it's been acquired, they'll also have that skill added to their plan. So now let's deal with some notification enhancements that are centered around learning. So one of them deals with mandatory learning. So if you've ever used this feature, then you're aware that if you mark something as mandatory, like a course or a class that you have been registered for or assigned, then that means that it will show up in your plan page with an exclamation point around it, and it'll also show up under the filters and as a to-do list mandatory item. So now, in addition to those things, you can also have a unique notification fired off only for items that are marked as mandatory. So previously, you had really just a single message that was sent to everybody, regardless of whether it's mandatory or not. Now, you can actually say, if it's a mandatory course, then I want to change the messaging for my learners and possibly for my managers. So just a nice flexible way to customize your messages tailored to the mandatory users. You can see that this will be included in 4 different named queries, 4 different notifications, and then you can see all those options right there. Something else that's been changed is the logic for determining if an instructor has been added to a class. So what was happening was people were adding admins as resources to ILT classes, and it was triggering the instructor-led class instructor changed notification, even though it wasn't truly an instructor that you're adding. So this has now been clarified, where the name of the notification will be instructor-led class person resource instructor added. So very specific. It's qualifying the resource only for instructors that are added. That will determine if it's triggered. If you're simply adding somebody else that will be functioning in a different role for the class, it's not going to trigger the notification. And you can see that there's also a couple named queries that were added for that as well. So there was a need to send class reminders which were more specific to the learners and their managers, and hence registration specific. And so there is a class commencement reminder as per registration. And this is going to be something that is replicated for not just ILT classes, but for blended and virtual classes as well. So you can differentiate them for the different delivery types. Additionally, you're going to have 2 named queries that will help support position management if you happen to have that enabled in your system. There's also going to be the ability to have a discontinued notification that will be sent to your course owners and creators to notify them that there's going to be a course that will be discontinued or has been discontinued. You can also have learners assigned to these notifications as well, but they will only be copied on them if the course was assigned to them versus them self-registering for the courses. For instructors and for admins that take advantage of the roster and the ability to print that roster, you'll notice that going forward, you'll actually be able to print them per session. So if you have a course with maybe 3 sessions, so it spans 3 days, you can actually go in and say, I only want to print day 1 roster, or day 2 roster, or day 3 roster. And so it'll certainly help to do that, as opposed to having just print one roster and then make changes to it for each of the different sessions. And then finally, there is the ability to mark something as a primary category and a secondary category. So if you have a course that you want to add to a category, previously you had the ability to add that course to multiple categories, but there wasn't a function to say, well, it really is going to be primarily categorized as this, and then these other categories are just the secondary categories. That way, if somebody happens to be browsing through them, they'll also find the course. But now you actually have that function in the system to say this is a primary category versus the secondary categories. And this is actually something that was brought over from Saba Enterprise Cloud that was previously exclusive to that platform. It's been added to the Saba Cloud platform.